This is episode number 130 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, being recorded on Monday, September 23rd, 2024, at 9:05 p.m. on a chilly Monday night. I tell you, I'm wearing my sweatshirt right now because it's been getting chillier and chillier as the fall and autumnal weather comes on to greet us, man. I am all for it. This is the time of the year you stay indoors, you keep yourself warm, you drink some hot beverages like some coffee or some tea or hot cocoa. You get under the blanket with a good book or a good film. It's such a wonderful time of the year. It's a very productive time of the year, and there's so much to look forward to, specifically with events. Of course, every time of the year there's something to look forward to, but there are those certain milestones of what you want to achieve before the holidays, before Halloween, before Thanksgiving, before Christmas, getting your year-end goals in place, the perfect time to reflect on the year at large and seeing if you have accomplished what you set out to do, and going from there. It's just a really, really great time of the year. It's starting to get chilly out, so all the windows that were previously open during the summer days are now being closed as the night comes in with this cool breeze. Man, it's just fantastic. You wake up in the morning and you got to go to work, but you don't even want to get out from the bed, man. Not solely because you're still tired, even though you try to get your beauty rest. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're just like, my gosh, man, I just need to stay in this bed. But it's also nice and warm under the blanket. It's like getting out of the shower, you feel that nice hot steam on you. You're like, man, I don't want to get out of the shower. This is just so nice. But you can't stay in bed all the time. You can't stay in the shower all the time. For one, your water bill would be through the roof, and then, your landlord probably wouldn't be too happy, or your parents probably wouldn't be too happy, or your, lovers or siblings, anyone probably wouldn't be too happy. So you can't stay in bed all day. So it's not good for you, Remember reading about a study about people who were staying in bed for like a year or so, and just what that does to the body, man. It is just completely nightmarish to think of the body just really kind of succumbing and not getting any kind of exercise, not getting any kind of movement, and just really settling. And it's a very frightening thought. So it's good to be comfortable, but it's not good to stay that way. It's good to get out of there and embrace yourself in a new environment out of bed. It's just really wonderful, man. Take on the day at large, take on the week at large. On Monday morning, everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's beginning of the week. I got to go back to work, man. It's such a great weekend, or I didn't do what I wanted to that weekend, or so on and so forth. But we take Mondays as opportunities to make it be the next step to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve in our personal life, in our work life, anything of the sort, man. Monday is a wonderful time of the week and should be cherished as such. I hope you all have been doing well. I'm in the throes of editing an episode that will be coming out hopefully this week. If everything stays on track and I stay focused, then it will be released this week, something that was recorded a couple nights ago. A very long episode, a different kind of episode, but that'll be online hopefully this week. I know I'm repeating myself there, but there it is. But just getting all the clips together and making sure the audio is all crisp and clear, and it's not too loud at certain points, not too quiet at others. It's tricky, but it's a process nonetheless. But that'll be great to finally get that out of the way, get that up online, and get that off my shoulder, and move on and take care of everything else needs to be taken care of. And because I've been focused on the last week getting a lot of those films in for that episode that'll be released. So I have films to talk about, of course, but I want to talk about this book written by David A. Szulskin. Copyright on this is 1996. Let me double check that. Sorry, 1997. Released by Fab Press. It's Wes Craven's Last House on the Left, The Making of a Cult Classic. This was, like I said, 1997. Released after Scream, before Scream 2. So some of the information in this is a little outdated in terms of the that says that it is still banned in Britain, which it is not anymore. But it is just a excellent compendium, very in detail about the making of just this brilliant film. It has many great interviews in this with all of the key players in this, with Wes Craven, Sean S. Cunningham, David Hess, Fred Lincoln, the two lead actresses whose names I am blanking on right now, but I'm going to pull it up so I can be appropriate and not leave them out since they are the headliners of the film. But Cassandra Peabody and Lucy Grantham, as well as interviews with Jeremy Rain and Mark Scheffler. And I think nothing by Richard Towers. I think he may have okay. No, he was alive at the time. He did pass away in 2016. And Cynthia Carr, who is still alive, and this is the only thing that she was in. But this is a really, really excellent book. It's a quick read. I mean, I'm basically just about finished with it. I have, I think, half a chapter left, and I'm going to be all set. But it is exactly what the title implies. It's a look into the the pre and post production and filming of Last House on the Left, 1972, Wes Craven's brilliant horror masterpiece, heavily inspired partial remake of Ingmar Bergman's also masterpiece, The Virgin Spring, taking these two similar ideas and going in different directions in them, but ultimately kind of having some of the same morals, the same kind of questionable moralities of in that film. You have a priest whose daughter is assaulted and killed by a group of bandits. I think they were bandits. I don't remember if they were just regular kind of criminals, or they're bandits or not. But it's what a lot of Ingmar Bergman's films kind of come to terms with is a character questioning their faith, questioning their religious ideologies. In that you have this priest character who is questioned why God could allow something so awful to happen to his daughter, and it's a very contemplative, a very thoughtful film. And this is a film that takes those ideas to an extent and kind of goes in a different direction with them, where it takes that kind of religious questioning out of it and more so about. I mean, not just in the context of America in the early 1970s, post Vietnam, but in terms of something that's often now sort of questioned upon and or pondered on in revenge films, of just what happens when these in this case this bourgeois sort of family, this couple, they find out that their daughter has been attacked and killed, and the people who are responsible are right in their house. It's a great plot. It's a great plot that all these films would end up taking from that general idea. I mean, what's really great about this book is that, the most of it is about the filming, is about the post-production, but then there's a great chapter as well about the different releases of the film. There's a lot of footage of the film that, to my knowledge, even to this day, is still missing. And I think, this book being written in 1990s, or being copyrighted in 1997, I should say, David A. Szulskin, he ponders at perhaps the original runtime maybe not being correct, but it could have just been a case where this information had been passed along. I think it was something like an original 94-minute version or something like that, where the version that we have now, while footage definitely is most likely forever lost, I think the most complete version that we have now is probably the 84-minute version that's been available for a little while. I actually have not rewatched the film in the context of reading this book, but will be rewatched in due time, because I'm curious what the actual traditional cut that we have and have had includes, because there are some mentions of a disemboweling scene where that footage exists, but I don't know if it is in the 84-minute cut. There is some dialogue that is in some versions of the film, or at least some scenes that play out longer that are not in the regular cut of the film. And actually, if you have that Arrow Blu-ray, which is a really wonderful collection, I don't know if the standard edition has it, but the special edition, which is what I have, which is the first pressing, has the 3 cuts of the film, which is the longest, I guess, quote unquote, unrated cut, if you will, and then the Krug and Company version, and then the R-rated version. But there's a great whole chapter that gets very much into the difficulty trying to track down which versions were what, especially then when a lot of theater owners and projectionists were really making their own versions of these films. And that's nothing exclusive to Last House on the Left. I mean, you hear stories about, I think of something like I Drink Your Blood, which has had that history is not quite as complicated in terms of a full version. I think now we have a full version of that. I think there's a little bit of it that's not in the film from what I remember, but don't quote me on that. But with that film, the projectionists and the theater owners are basically just cutting at will whatever they wanted to, so you don't even know what kind of version of the film you'd be getting. And it's with Last House on the Left, they talk about in the 80s how it was a German, I think it was, no, it wasn't German, it was the Vestron video that was looking for the additional footage that was the quote unquote like unrated version. Or maybe it was the German VHS. I apologize. I don't remember off the top of my head. But even some of that footage not being entirely there. What I believe, and what the book brings up as well, is that because Wes Craven it became and I hate to even use this word because it sounds almost like a backhand to this film, and I definitely don't mean it in this context, but I think he became a more mature filmmaker, and that's what this book kind of talks about with him and Sean Cunningham, about the post Last House on the Left films, or post years after Last House on the Left, not wanting to just do the same thing, wanting to do different kinds of work. I mean, Sean Cunningham would try his hand at comedies and dramas, and he didn't get the success that he had wanted. So when he makes his horror return, he ends up making Friday the 13th, and that ends up ironically being the whole kickstart to a new part of his career. And then Wes Craven as well, I mean, he after this, he actually did The Fireworks Woman in 1975, which is an adult film. They were talking about him with doing another horror film, but he wanted to kind of wait, and he followed that up with 1977's The Hills Have Eyes, which became a massive success in his own right. It got a sequel, it got a remake, and then a sequel to the remake, and then actually got an unofficial third one as well. I forgot the name of it, but I think Lance Henriksen is in that as well. I've not seen that one. But with The Last House, and also Steve Miner, who worked on the film, who I think actually acts in the film as well. I think he's one of the hippies in the film, but Steve Miner as well would go on to have a prosperous career. He would direct Friday the 13th Part 2, House from 1985, Warlock, he did H2O. He did a bunch of stuff, man. Everybody in this film, I think at least the main kind of big players to some extent had a good kind of follow after this, because I mean, Sandra Peabody and we had a very, even before I read the book, kind of had a not so great time working on this film, doing a lot of these harsh kind of sequences where she's being attacked and she is, being, like tortured and stabbed and all that. I mean, for her, it was very difficult being in this setting and being, having to pretend all the time they're being attacked. It's very emotionally kind of draining. And the book does talk about that, the difficulties of filming a lot of these sequences with her, and she was just getting very emotional with it. And even Jeremy Rain, who plays the character Sadie, she was very apprehensive to having to inflict a lot of this torture as well. Fred Lincoln, who is primarily an adult film actor and a director, he had quite a prosperous acting career there, and actually I've talked about some of his adult films that he directed. Actually, that was the first episode of Peephole Pictures when I talked about Daisy May and A Formal Faucet. And actually Richard Towers as well, who plays Murray's father, was also in, he's the character that at the beginning of Flesh Pot on 42nd Street when he is talking about wanting the apartment to look all good and all that. I mean, he has a sex scene in that, but I don't even remember if it's even if it's even hardcore or not. I think it might. I mean, I don't remember of that, but. And David Hess, of course, would do. I mean, he became known for doing these kinds of films, of doing. I mean, and to myriad degrees of quality, but interesting stuff nonetheless. He plays a great antagonist in other films. Like my favorite of his post films of his that he would do was House on the Edge of the Park by Jared Deodato. And he would do Swamp Thing, also again with Wes Craven, and he would do Hitchhike, which is a pretty well-known film, also very good as well. Actually, I rewatched Hitchhike not too long ago, and it's very good. And he's also a musician too. He does the soundtrack in this film. Some of the strongest stuff in the book definitely comes from kind of the stuff that I find most interesting is the post-production stuff, and sort of what happened afterward, where a lot of the footage, like they use some of the footage of the disemboweling scene in this fake documentary. To make a quote unquote, oh, this is real snuff footage, but it obviously was not. And they have this ridiculous kind of interview with a guy with a bag on his head. I mean, the film itself, in not just in the context, or not just in the film itself, but I think I would say in the context of where American films were going at this time of this post-Vietnam, not even just more independent kinds of films, because I mean, even though this was distributed by Hallmark, even after this, were releasing a lot of films banking off of this one. You know, there's plenty of great pictures in here as well. Great, drive-in newspaper ads of all these films that played with it. And films that were retitled of like, ooh, The Next House on the Left, or the Last House 2, or this and that, when in actuality it had nothing to do with it. And then actually, funnily enough, this actually gets remade in 2009. It's kind of funny, a film that had all that controversy and had all this trouble with censorship ends up getting a remake. I think that was Universal who may have put that out. I don't remember. It's a very glossy remake. It's a lot of bigger actors, I should say. At least compared to this, I mean, this is all pretty much unknowns in this film, and I think that works to its advantage. I mean, I also got to mention Martin Kove as well, who plays one of the deputies in the film, who would go on to be in, I mean, he's on Cobra Kai right now, but he would be in Rambo: First Blood Part 2 and Death Race 2000 and The Karate Kid. I would say probably any of the actors, he probably had the biggest career after this. But it's all kind of in the eye of the beholder, ultimately. It's not a matter of who had the bigger or smaller career. It's really kind of more so. Here's me not silencing my telephone. I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. But actually, there's one section I could actually read about the censorship, which is a passage that I wanted to mention when I read it before. Let me see here if I can actually find it. Bear with me for just a moment. Okay. Yes. Okay. Gosh, you know what? I probably should have made a note of where the actual section was that I wanted to talk about. Maybe not. I don't want to kind of linger on this forever. It doesn't make for very good listening of me trying to find this one section to talk about. Kind of just looking through here, trying to find the one section. Let me go ahead and pause this for 1 second. I try not to pause it, but in this case, I think it's probably better off so I'm not rambling on here trying to find this part. I didn't find the section I was looking for, but I'll read this last paragraph that kind of wraps up the chapter on it. And it's a good point I also wanted to bring up as well. It says here, and I quote, "All of these little missing and or added snippets are enough to make the Last House completist, go from scratching his head to tearing his hair out in bloody clumps. But in the final analysis, most of the discrepancies between the various versions are trivial. Only the 82-minute Vestron release of the film is significantly hampered by the cuts. Those whose interest in the film extends solely to its bloodshed and deviance are better off renting a Faces of Death video, a bondage tape, or one of the many other slasher flicks whose level of gore far exceeds anything done in Last House on the Left. A thoroughly uncut version of the film may indeed still exist. David Hess claims to have such a print, but until the legality of the current ownership of the rights to the movie is sorted out and someone decides to invest time and money in a restoration, the remaining lost footage will continue to molder on some dark shelf, slowly turning red. And David Hess as well has passed away. He passed away in, I believe it was 2011. Whether or not he ever had an uncut version, I don't know. I don't know why he would have an uncut version, honestly. I figure that if Wes didn't have it, or if who was it that was? Because when they were doing a release for the either the German or the Vestron VHS, here we go. The resulting second Vestron release, which went on sale in June 1986 on VHS and Laserdisc, and advertised on its box cover as the quote-unquote uncut version of the film, runs 83.5 minutes. This edition of the movie was actually struck from a print which Frumkes had compiled in 1975, and that's Roy Frumkes, who ended up working with the restoration of this film for that VHS. At the time, many prints of the film had already been truncated by community censors and theater owners, and Frumkes asked Wes Craven to help him put together an uncut version for posterity. Craven agreed to the project and helped Frumkes obtain two 16mm prints of Last House on the Left, along with some 35mm footage from a print that, according to Frumkes, came from a shelf at Sean Cunningham's West 45th Street office. The 35mm footage includes the following scenes, blah, blah, blah. Frumkes made a 16mm reduction negative from these 35mm positive clips, submitting the footage to a lab twice in order to match the colors as closely as possible. From the resulting negative, Frumkes struck 16mm positive footage, which he integrated into the two prints, one of which was used as the source for Vestron's VHS and Laserdisc releases. The restored footage in the Vestron edition is noticeably grainier than the remainder of the film due to the inevitable degradation of the image involved in reduction form, in reduction from 35mm to 16mm. And later on in the chapter, according to Mr. Frumkes, Craven deliberately did not replace all of the footage which had been cut from the film. I think Wes's sensibilities had changed in the time since he had done Last House. Frumkes comments, some of the scenes were actually longer in the original cut of the film, but Wes restored them as he saw fit, and I think the version he put together is, in that sense, a director's cut. A look at the original 16mm film from which Vestron struck their master tape reveals two spots where footage was left out. The scene of Marie being molested by Sadie in the woods, and the scene of Krug carving his name into Marie's chest. During both of these scenes, the imprinted image of a tape splice is visible on the 16mm film, suggesting that the print was duped from another copy which had already been cut. There are also some audible cuts in the soundtrack during these scenes, and throughout the stabbing and disembowelment sequence, which seem to indicate missing footage. A Canadian release of the film on the Cinema International Canada video label reveals several brief additional scenes which are absent from the reconstituted Vestron edition. This slightly longer print of the film, henceforth referred to as the CIC version, was also released by a Dutch company called Empire Video, as well as on Japanese Laserdisc. The Dutch and Japanese releases are both letterboxed in the correct aspect ratio of 185:1, but the CIC edition is perhaps the most watchable of the three because it does not contain any intrusive foreign language subtitles. Nudie completionists note that in the Japanese Laserdisc, a brief glimpse of full frontal nudity during the scene where Marie and Phyllis are forced to make love is visually fogged. The CIC version runs approximately 84 minutes and 9 seconds, as opposed to the Vestron running time of 83 minutes, 31 seconds, and then below is the scenes which are altered and changed, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's a very tricky history trying to get, I think at this point, now with Craven's passing, now with Cunningham, he has, he has enough on his plate with the never-ending Friday the 13th lawsuit issues. I think at this point, what they were saying in the book is that it's basically I think it's fair to say unless it pops up, which I mean it could, but I'm not holding my breath for it about that footage. I think at this point the 84-minute cut that is most widely distributed is the most we're gonna get, and I think that even though it may not contain everything, like I said, I think that I don't know if the disemboweling sequence is even fully in order there, even though that footage is out there. At this point, what the book was saying is that I guess you could possibly reconstruct everything together if you really could. I really don't know. I mean, I'm trying to base this off of the last time that I watched it, remembering what was actually in the 84-minute version of the film. I don't think this would ever be fully uncut because at this point, if it's not intentionally destroyed, I mean, I'm very curious how those elements would have held up, especially after Hess's passing, if anyone would have done anything with that footage. But I mean, it's all speculation, honestly. Maybe some of the features on the last release can provide some insight into it. It's just interesting how a lot of the sequences in this film have become almost urban legends in a way, where the original script for the film was far grislier than was actually filmed, than was actually put into it. And I think just as time, when they had when Wes and Sean had kind of the right idea to not go as crazy as it did in the script, because I mean the original script gets pretty wild. There's some excerpts, or there's some descriptions of it that I think even today would be pretty shocking if they actually went ahead and filmed any of that. I think over time it's just Wes not being interested in wanting to put some of that in the film, and obviously, and going on to do his own thing. And I get that. So I think at this point, unless there is some significant new information, I think where we're at now is probably what we're gonna get. Because I don't even know who actually even owns the rights to the film now. I mean, I guess whoever well, I think that original Blu-ray of The Last House on the Left was, I don't know if that was Universal or not. I should really just look this up, but I'm not gonna, because that came out when the remake came out, and it had or was it MGM maybe that had it? Gosh, I don't know, man. I really don't know. It doesn't really matter though. I mean, it's out now. It's readily available. But yeah, and I like the end of the book, or at least where I'm at now. It's talking about a lot of the knockoffs, a lot of the ripoffs. I mean, how many films we're just taking the subtitle, or the tagline. And it's funny actually. I remember when I first saw this film when I was younger. And I remember that trailer just like truly scaring me when I was younger. It's such a great feeling, kind of, to remember being truly scared by a film. I remember being scared by the trailer of like Friday the 13th Part 2, and I couldn't even watch it. It was like a force that I just could not watch the screen. It was impossible. And this trailer as well, just, oh my gosh, the it's only a movie, it's only a movie. It just freaked me out so much that when I actually ended up finally seeing the film, I remember I watched it on my computer, and I had my hand over the volume. I kept it low the entire time. I was so freaked out and then, but then even then, I think I could even see just kind of the artistry of it. It's a film that I think, like I Spit on Your Grave, has sort of always been kind of unfairly thought of as exploitation, sort of cheap violence. And I think that with both these films, and even something maybe more extreme like Cannibal Holocaust, I think Wes Craven's intentions are far more clear and intentional than I Spit on Your Grave or Cannibal Holocaust. But with all three films, they're, in retrospect, watching them, I think they all really are trying to say something, and are trying to do something far greater than just what a lot of the ripoffs would do. Because as much as I enjoy, the Last House on the Left ripoffs, I think, Hitchhike is good. I think Hitchhike is actually really good. I love House on the Edge of the Park. That one's kind of an exception. I think Diodato is actually doing something far smarter with that film as well, even though the reveal never made a lick of sense to me. It doesn't make any sense in that movie. It never has, no matter how much I try to justify it. But these films, I think, are actually going for something more. And I actually probably should talk about this more because I have more to say, but I am running out of time. So That's that, man. That was maybe I'll come back to this discussion when I get a chance to rewatch Last House on the Left, because it's been a little while since I've seen it, and I think after I read this book with this kind of context in mind, it's going to make for a far more educational viewing, because it's also just one of my favorite films. I think it's just a total masterpiece, and I think it's one of the most unsettling and creepiest films ever, and I think it's a brilliant film, truly a brilliant film, and R.I.P. to Wes Craven. I mean, he's just one of just these true visionaries, not just a horror visionary, but just a great filmmaker. But I'm running out of time. Thank you guys for listening so much. A fun new episode is coming very soon. Keep an eye on that, and I'll be back next time. So thank you so much.